everybody. I'm Chef Julia Dunaway, and today I'm going to be making some zucchini bread. This is the time of year when, guess what? We have zucchini growing in the garden. This one is way too big. It's one of those that got hidden under the leaves and I didn't see it. The best size is this size. This one's a little too small. I don't know why we picked it, but this size is pretty good. So this is the size I used. But these are the ones that people try to give you, you know, and they'll say, oh, would you like some vegetables from the garden? And they give you a bag of zucchini that looks like that. And you kind of want to say, oh, thank you. And then you take it home and put it in your compost bin, I guess, I don't know. But I don't usually eat them when they're that big because they're tough. So this time of year, we have a lot of zucchini. I'm in Texas, it's sunny today, beautiful weather. I have a huge vegetable garden. I have all kinds of stuff growing, including zucchini, of course. So I wanted to make something good with it that I could share with friends, something that would be great for a gift. Zucchini bread is a good gift because you've already done the hard work. You've used the zucchini from the garden and made something that tastes really good. So that's what we're going to make. And we're going to use some whole grain flours. So the flours I'm using today are whole wheat white flour. So it's, whole white wheat flour is what Homestead Grist Mills calls it. This company is in Waco, Texas. And I will include my information about them in the show notes. They have really good products. And then they also have a really good whole spelt flour. So I'm going to be using their flours just because I visited that organization. It's like a whole, a bunch of different, it's a grist mill, and they have all kinds of other operations on their property in Waco. And it's really beautiful, and I really liked how they were doing it. They were grinding their own wheat there, and just really a nice operation, very family oriented, family owned, generations. It's just a really good operation, so I like them. So I'm going to be using a cup of spelt flour, and I wanted to measure it out for you the way I measure flour, just so you can see that it is important to measure accurately. So for example, I'm going to take, sorry for that noise. I'm going to take my spelt flour and I'm going to spoon it into my cup lightly. I'm just kind of spooning it in here. I'm not letting it pack down. I'm not jostling the cup. I'm just kind of spooning it in here until it overflows. And then I'll take my table knife and I'll level it off with my knife. All right, so it's very light. It's in there very lightly. The most accurate way to measure flours or dry ingredients is using a weight. So I really prefer recipes that say so many grams rather than cups. But in America, so many recipes are written in cup form, and that's what people are used to. Not everybody has a kitchen scale. Not everyone wants a kitchen scale. So I try to make my recipes kind of user-friendly. So I'm using cups, but it's important that you measure the right way. So we're gonna do 3/4 of a cup of the white whole wheat flour. Same thing, I spoon it in. I don't shake it or anything. 1/2 cup, and 1/4 of a cup is 3/4 of a cup. I'm gonna do the same thing. Why is this important? Well, if you were to do an experiment and take your measuring cup, most people do something like this. They'll take their cup and they'll go in and they'll get a big spoonful and they'll shake it and they'll get it level. And if you took that and you compared it to the way I measured it, you would get more this way, the second way. And how that can be a problem is, you know, the problem comes into place when, to make sure this is the right one, yeah. No, this is the one I'm using. I didn't want to use the wrong one. The problem comes into place is a little bit extra flour can mess things up. So you think, oh, it can't make that much of a difference. How could that be a big deal if I just had a little extra flour? Well, it does. It will make your baked good kind of tough if it has too much flour. I did this the other day. I made a batch of the zucchini bread or pumpkin, no, it was pumpkin bread. And I wasn't really paying attention, and I think I kind of overdid the flour, just being in a big rush, not really being as careful as normal. And it was kind of dry. And I know that's what I did, because the next time I made it, I did my very careful measuring, very light, and it turned out perfect. So, you know, it is important. We're going to use a 1/2 cup of turbinado sugar. I've already measured that out. Sugar is not quite as important. It won't make that much of a difference if you use a little bit too much or too little sugar. You can adjust sugar without changing the texture too much. This was all I had left of my organic raw, excuse me, turbinado sugar. I kind of like that. It's unrefined. It's kind of coarse. It really has a good flavor. It's almost like a brown sugar, but it's not. So I'm using a 1/2 cup of that, and I'm using a 1/4 cup of date sugar. So the date sugar, it can be kind of lumpy, but the lumps will they'll just mix right out. They're not that bad. And the date sugar looks like this. I get Date Lady date sugar from this company. I get it on Amazon. It's in my Amazon store. I'll put the link to my Amazon store in the show notes, because I think I even have a section called baking supplies with stuff like this. Then we're going to use some baking powder. So I have it in the container so I could show you how to measure it. In this case, we have 2½ teaspoons. There happens to be a flat surface here in the can, and that was intended to scoop it and make it even. So I know this is pretty obvious and maybe not even something that you need for me to tell you, but I have learned, and it was 2½ teaspoons, I have learned that the obvious things are not always things that people know. You know, I grew up at a time where we had to take home economics in high school. That's how old I am. It was a kind of a thing that you took. Everybody took it. I don't even know if we had a choice. And the boys took wood shop and the girls took home ec. We didn't have boys in our class, but we had a teacher that taught us how to bake. It was a part of home economics, how to measure, how to stir, how to make cakes, and you know, I thought it was so boring at the time. 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and baking soda has the same thing. It's got a little straight edge inside the container just for leveling off your spoon, because you don't want to overdo it on baking powder and baking soda. It will not be good. Then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I use kosher salt for everything. It's just what I use. Then we're going to use a teaspoon of cinnamon, just because I like cinnamon and stuff. But if you don't like cinnamon, you don't have to put it in, but I think it makes it taste good. And a tablespoon of pumpkin seed powder. This is an ingredient I've been using in some of my baked goods. It's protein powder, but basically it's a source of protein. It has 18 grams for 1 ounce, and we're just going to use a tablespoon. It's just crushed up pumpkin seeds, and it doesn't really add any kind of flavor, maybe a little bit of nuttiness, but nothing that makes a huge difference. So I have all the dry ingredients in here, and I'm going to mix them up with instead of a sifter, I have a whisk. Back in the old days in home economics, they made us sift everything. You guys probably don't even, most of you watching probably never even used a sifter. I'm going to break up some of these date sugars. I can see these lumps in here, and my whisk is not breaking them up, so I'm going to use my best tools I own, my hands. They're clean. I just washed them, to break up these clumps of date sugar. I don't want those clumps in here. But we couldn't just whisk things. We weren't allowed to use whisk. We had to use a sifter. And a sifter, I have one. I never use it. It's one more thing to clean. Okay, I think I broke all those date sugar clumps up. Date sugar does clump up, but it usually dissolves well. But I just don't want those big clumps of date sugar floating around in there. This smells really good. Let me wash my hands. So the whisk, your whisk will work just fine. You know, you can just use the whisk like I did. It's fine. It's not gonna make a big difference. Okay, so then we're gonna just add to this same container, which I love because we don't have to dirty up another bowl. We can just use this bowl. We're going to add our 1 cup of grated zucchini, and I'm gonna show you how I grated it really quickly. I just took my regular old grater. It's kind of a normal size grater. It's not micro or anything. And I just took the zucchini and grated it. And it makes sort of, you know, not really thick, but not really thin pieces. You don't want it to be those tiny little pieces of zucchini because zucchini is really watery. So if you try to do it on a small whole grater, you're gonna have a lot of trouble because the zucchini is going to turn into water. Okay, so I'm gonna mix this in and I'm gonna start adding some other things. I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons of yogurt, and I'm using cashew yogurt. This is my favorite kind for baking. It's called Forager. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this Forager brand is doesn't have any added sugar. It doesn't have any added fat, although it does have coconut cream in it, but a small amount. So I like it. It gives a richness to the baked goods that I like. And then we're going to put in a 1/2 cup of soy milk. I've already measured it out. And I use an organic soy milk that I get at my local gourmet grocery store, Central Market, which I love that store. I go there all the time. We're going to put in 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. But I think in this case, I'm going to use a tablespoon of each, maple syrup and date syrup. So I've got my maple syrup. I'll use a tablespoon of that. And then I'll use a tablespoon of date syrup. I like to use date syrup whenever I can. Using only date syrup, sometimes it doesn't work out that well for me, but you can use only date syrup if you want. And you can only use date sugar if you want. If you didn't want to use that turbinado sugar, you don't have to. Some people are completely getting away from using products that have any kind of sugar, and they just don't want to use any kind of sugar except for date syrup, and that's fine. It will work just fine. Okay, and then we have to add, I think we have everything in here. We have our soy milk, we have our yogurt, and then I'm gonna add some walnuts, and then we're gonna mix this together. It seems kind of dry to me, but it's all right. It will work out just fine. I think the zucchini is a little drier than what you think. But I'm gonna just go with it. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna second guess it. I'm gonna put my walnuts in. That was a 1/2 cup of walnuts. These are the kind of walnuts you get from the bulk section in the grocery store. English walnut, halves and pieces, 1/2 cup. Put that in. And I'm just gonna mix it up until it's all together. I'm not gonna over mix it because I'm sure you know that if you over mix stuff, it makes the dough or the batter form gluten, and then that makes it tough. So we don't want that. So then I have my 9x5 loaf pan, and I've lined it. And I take parchment paper, cut it out to fit down the side and down the middle. If you hear what sounds like snoring, my 2 boxers are over here sleeping on the floor, and I can just hear them making their sounds. My loaf pan is non-stick. It's a USA pan, which is the brand. And I could put my bread in here and not have it lined with parchment paper, but I do the parchment paper to show you how to do it because a lot of people aren't familiar with cooking without oil, and normally I would have used some kind of, you know, Baker's Joy or whatever that is, spray, but I don't use that anymore because I cook plant-based, no oil, and that doesn't use any kind of cooking spray. So I had to figure out a way to do this where it doesn't stick to the pan. And so I bought these non-stick USA pans, which work great, but not everybody has those. So that's why I want to show you the way I would do it if I didn't have the non-stick pan. All right, so here we go. Got all the batter out of here, mostly. I can smell that cinnamon. It smells really good. And it's always good to scrape out your batter. I could probably get more out of here if I had a bench scraper, but I don't, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I am going to get it off my spoon. And then I'm going to smooth it over. Try not to be too messy and get it all over my parchment paper. Here, I got it over there again. That's just sloppy. I don't like sloppiness on my baking. Got that out of there. All right, so I'm going to smooth it down because that makes it look good. And if we wanted to, we could put some walnuts on the top, just so people know that it has walnuts in it. So I may do that, just put a few. They don't have to be decorated or anything. You know, we could just sprinkle a few on there, just drop a few on top. I always like to see that on my things because then that reminds me that there's walnuts inside. And it looks good when they're done baking. All right, that's it on our zucchini bread. It's zucchini walnut bread. It has whole wheat flour, but white whole wheat flour, spelt flour, which is a whole grain flour. It's got date syrup and a little maple syrup. And it's got some date sugar and some regular turbinado sugar, soy milk, cashew yogurt. It's plant-based, dairy-free, no oil. And now I'm going to put it in the oven at 360 degrees in the middle. And then I'll come back at the end and show you what it looks like. It's going to take about, my experience, oh, that's great, I got batter on my papers. It takes about 50 minutes, okay? So I'll check it I usually check it like at 45 minutes just to make sure. But it takes about 50 minutes. It takes a while. But then to check it, we take a toothpick, insert it in the middle. If the toothpick comes out clean, that's typically a sign that it's done, the toothpick test. So I'll be back with the finished pumpkin bread in about 50 minutes, but it won't be 50 minutes for you. I'm back with the finished zucchini bread. It came right out of my pan, no sticking because of the parchment paper, and it's not burnt. It's cooked all the way through, which is good, because with a dense bread like this, you have to make sure it cooks all the way through, which is why we did the toothpick test. The toothpick inserted in the middle came out clean. Could I have cooked it a little bit less? Maybe. I could have checked it at 45 minutes. I checked it at 50 minutes, and I'm going to cut a piece now. But my experience is it takes the 50 minutes. So I cut it with a serrated knife. Instead of smashing it, I kind of sawed at it. It hasn't really cooled very long, so we don't want to, you know, cut it too soon. But it looks fine. It's cooked all the way through. So it doesn't have any kind of, what you want to watch for is you don't want it to have like an uncooked center, which you see sometimes in plant-based, any kind of baked good when it's not cooked all the way through. So we want to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. And with zucchini, you don't want, you know, mushy zucchini in the middle of your bread. So I know it's good, but I'll have to do a little taste test. So I have my cup of hot green tea here. So this would be a great snack with green tea. It's good. The walnuts give it a nice little crunch. And you don't really taste much of the zucchini. And that's important because, you know, a lot of people don't want to taste the zucchini in the zucchini bread. It's just in there for moisture. So yes, delicious recipe. This would travel well. You could take it with you. for a snack. Give it as a gift. It would, you know, wrap up nicely. It's a nice dense loaf, but remember it's whole grain, so it is a dense loaf, and it's supposed to be. It's healthier because it has whole grain flour in it. It doesn't have refined flour, and it has wholesome ingredients, and it is dark because we use the date syrup and date sugar, and that kind of makes things have more of a dark taste, but also gives them kind of a, almost like a molasses flavor. Very deep and good. So this is the zucchini bread, spelt, white whole wheat flour, walnuts, yogurt, plant-based, no dairy, no eggs, no oil. And I think you'd really like it if you made it. So I hope you make this, and I hope you follow me on my YouTube channel here. I try to make a video every week of something whole food, plant-based, and no oil. So thank you if you already follow me. And if you make the bread, post it, tag me, whatever, so that I know you tried it, and let me know how yours turned out. So thanks for watching this, and I'll be back soon with another recipe. Bye-bye.